Hi quilty friends, and welcome to my little spot in Podunk. Before we get started on our quilt block, I wanted to talk about a few things that you may need to do this quilt block. The first thing, of course, is going to be fabric. The fabrics that I chose are 2 Lori Holt prints and 1 Moda print. These are the 2 Lori Holt. This is the Moda. I have no idea what line these came from, but I'm sure a quick Google search of Lori Holt Gray and Lori Holt Orange Gingham will bring these up. And this is just a Moda Swiss dot, but a lot of the different fabric companies make a Swiss dot. And I don't give fabric yardages during this because I'm using different prints for each quilt or each quilt block. So as we go along and do this series of quilt blocks, that's why there's no yardages. Each quilt or each block is different. Scrappy. So the next thing that I find really helpful when I'm making quilt blocks is design board. And I have a tutorial for these design boards on my YouTube channel. And I like them because they just grab a hold of fabric and it stays right like that. And then you can layer your other fabric pieces up on top of it. Okay, another thing you might need is something to label your pattern pieces with, because there's a lot of little pieces in this quilt block. So it's nice to have them labeled. But I want to say, just because there's a lot of little pieces doesn't mean that you can't do this block. You can. I don't care. If you've never done anything like this before, it's super easy and you're going to be able to do it. So these little labels are free printable, which I will link to below. Of course, we're going to need a quilt ruler of some sort for marking. And since we're marking the back of our fabrics, we're going to need a pencil. And I like these really fine, I think these are 0.7s or 0.07s is what they are. Mechanical pencil. They just do a really nice fine line. You could also use Frixion pen or a water soluble marker. And then of course we're going to need a rotary cutter of your choice and a pair of scissors for cutting off those flippy corners. And if you don't know what flippy corners are, we'll get into that later. But scissors or a rotary cutter, either one will work. So there's a PDF, a printable PDF for this block with the cutting instructions and the layout instructions only. I know not everyone likes to print out PDFs or download them. So while I change all this over to make a block, I'm going to put some measurements in here and some pictures. You can screenshot those or just sit there and write them down, whatever you want to do. So here we go. Okay, I've brought my pieces down here. I've got M and N. Now I'm going to take this pin out and move this. But when you look at the pattern, you can see that we have a diagonal line right here. And that's the diagonal line that we're going to be making. Okay? Now we're going to take this and flip it over on the back side. And it doesn't matter where you position it, just position it anywhere to where you still have a piece of fabric sticking out right there. That way you know exactly where that point's going to be. And you're going to lay your ruler on there. And it looks like this is going to be in my way too, so I'm just going to move that. And we are going to draw a diagonal line from this point to right here, right where that little crook is, right there, that point. So I'm going to stick my pencil right there. And then got that lined up, so I'm going to mark it. And when you're drawing a line, make sure you tilt your pencil this way. It gives you a more accurate line. If you go straight, it puts your pencil at a different angle. So there we've got it lined up like we need it. And then we're going to take it and move it down to the end like this. And we are going to sew, when we get to this point, we're going to sew right on that diagonal line. And then when we flip it back, we've got a perfect little piece like this. Okay? And I'm just going to go ahead and pin this like this. Well, I guess I should have put I'm going to put my little thing back on there like this. pin it together. That way we know what we're doing. We don't want to get confused. If it's your first time doing a quilt block like this, you know, it's a good idea to have those markers on there. So I put those back on there. Okay, D and E. Here's E and here's D. Okay, we've got this diagonal line, right? So we're going to want to turn this way, and our diagonal line is going to want to go this way. So if we fold this back like this, it looks just like that over there. Okay? So again, we're just going to lay this on here. All right, so we line that up with the top of our fabric, and we're going to want to draw a line from here to here. Okay, now we're going to want to move that over to the end and pin it into place before we sew it. So we can just go like this, and it's pinned into place right where it needs to be sewn. Okay, the first thing I did was to change out my foot to an open toe foot, because all the diagonal seams, we're going to sew those first, and then we'll come back and start assembling the block. So I'm just going to start off with the hardest part first, and that'll be the pieces that we just marked. And I'm going to take this little piece here and set it off to the side. Now all these pieces aren't labeled. Like P, these are the gray squares, the 1.5 inch squares, and so I didn't label each one of those. I just labeled one. And then F are the 1.5 inch squares that are white. So just thought I would mention that. Okay, so we've picked up M and N. And I'm going to go ahead and take off these little markers. And we're going to sew that from corner to corner. Make sure they're lined up. You could pin it if you like. I don't think I'm going to today. And I've also reduced my stitches to 1.8 because this quilt has a lot of little pieces, like the 1.5 inch pieces. So it's best to have a reduced stitch for that. So when you're handling them a lot, you don't undo your stitching. So I'm just going to sew from corner to corner, stitching right beside that line that we drew. You know, instead of right on it, you're stitching right beside it. And I do that just to give myself a little bit of leeway. I would rather trim this up than to not have enough. So I stitch right beside it. Okay, now we've got our stitch done, and what we want to do before we go cutting anything is to flip that back and see if we've done it correctly. And we have, so yay, we did it. All right, well, let's go ahead and grab the piece right here. This is an F letter, and put it on there. And we'll cut both of these off in just a second. And we can look at our picture and see that this part is right here, and we need to stitch it this direction. So I'm just lining up my needle with the very corner of the square, and then lining up this corner with this middle line on my sewing machine, or on the bed of my sewing machine. Now you can use tape to mark that line. You can use this tape that I'm using, which is called Cluck Cluck Sew seam tape, and I'll put it down, a link to it down below. I am not affiliated in any way with the links that I put down below. I do not get paid. Okay, and then again, we're going to just pull that back, and it's perfect. It's just like we need it. So we can go ahead and trim these off. Now you can use your rotary cutter, but I'm not going to all that nonsense. I'm just going to cut these off like that. And pull this back and make sure you're cutting on the correct side. You don't want to cut on the wrong side. And I'm just cutting roughly a 1/4 inch, give or take. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. Now these big ones I save, I've mentioned that before. I sew them together and make half square triangles out of them. Okay, now we're just push that back. And if you need to trim it up, trim it up. It looks like I've got a little bit sticking out there. I'm gonna press it just a little bit better and see if that works. And we've got just a tail there sticking out. So I trimmed it and put it back up there. And one of the hardest units is done. Woohoo! All right, so now we're gonna come over here and get the D and the E. I'm gonna put this down here, and we've got it ready to go. Our diagonal line is already made. Pull that letter off. And we're going to sew the corner to corner, just like we did before. I'm sewing just to the right of that line. That gives you just a teeny bit of wiggle room. Let's go ahead and pull that one off of there also. And bring it over here and flip it back, and we've got our line sewn perfectly. So we can go ahead and cut that off. And we've got one more little piece to put on there, that one that was on the bottom right there. That's an F piece, so let's go ahead and get that and sew it on there. And we can look at our cat over here and see that we need to sew it from this corner to that corner. And we cut that off. Okay. And there's our kitty cat tail. How cute is that? All right, now I'm just gonna fast forward through all this. I'm gonna sew every one of these on that need to be sewn from corner to corner. After I do that, then I will come back and we'll start putting the units all together. Okay, because we want these to nest on the kitty cat face with the neck, I want to press these in different directions. So up here you can see that I have pressed both of these out towards the white. On the kitty cat face, right here, I have pressed this one towards the gray, right here, and this one I've pressed the wrong direction. We need to press it also towards the gray. That way they'll nest up. Okay. Okay, because this area is going to get a little bit congested when we make our stem here, I'm going to press these seams open. I don't typically press seams open, but sometimes you have to make an exception to the rule just so you don't have a bunch of bulk. Okay, I'm going to press the white corners towards the pumpkin, the orange, and then I'm going to press these outward, the gray ones outward for the cat. All right, we've gotten all of our flippy corners done. That was really quick, didn't take that long at all. It looks a lot worse than what it is when you've got all that going on when you first look at it, but it's really super simple, super easy. So what I'm gonna do now is work in these in units. We're gonna put this together and then we'll put this unit together and we'll sew that to that. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is put this unit together, and we need to change out our presser foot, which I did not do, and reset my seam allowance. And I'm going to up my stitch length back to normal, which is usually 2.0 or 2.5. It really just, it's whatever you want to do. I'm going to go 2.5 because the longer the stitch that I can get by with, the faster this is going to go. All right, so now we're going to sew that together. Okay, this is another seam that I'm going to press open just because there's so much going on in that area. So reduce those seams as much as we can. Okay, then we're going to stitch this to A. Just flip it up there and take it over the sewing machine and stitch it. All right, we're going to take this unit and press it upwards. And that one is done. So now we're going to stitch the little kitty cat face and ears together. And I'm going to press toward the kitty cat face just to reduce some bulk from those corner triangles. Put a little kitty cat up there, and we're going to put C over on top. Okay, I am going to press this to the white. Now we're going to sew the kitty cat head to the kitty cat body. Okay, now let's press this girl. I don't think it's going to matter either way, so we're just going to press it. Let's press it down. Let me look. Yeah, let's press it down towards the little cat body. There's fewer seams going that direction. Oh, looky there. Okay, and we're just going to flip this unit over on top of that one. Okay, now let's take and press this seam outward toward the pumpkin stem. That's why we press those seams open, so we wouldn't have so much bulk there. Oh, she is coming together quite nicely. Yes, she is. All right, now what we got to do is put this unit right here together. We're going to start out by doing the G and the O. Okay, it doesn't matter which way you press it, but I'm going to press it towards the dark. Put it up there like that, and I'm just going to pull this off of here because we don't need that any longer. Okay, and we're going to press this one out towards the gray. And then we're just gonna flip that over on this one. It's done. Let's get that pumpkin put on there. Alrighty, now let's press that down towards the pumpkin. I don't know. Maybe we should press it up towards the cat. See how if it feels any better. Yeah, I'm liking it better pressed upwards. All we got left to do is put our little kitty cat tail on there and she will be done. Okay, and press that tail out. And you've got a sweet little kitty cat. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Isn't she cute? I need to give her a good press. And if you need to trim this girl up, there's that seam needs to be pressed. If you need to trim her up, probably the best place to trim would be on this side. No, I would trim this side if you need to, and down at the bottom if you need to, because you don't want to cut off the little ear tips. And you could take a little bit off up here, but not a whole heck of a lot. I'm going to give mine a good press and I'll be right back. Okay, I pressed my quilt block and trimmed it up. It turned out really good. Had just a little bit of trimming over here and a little bit of trimming up here. And then I've brought out my block 1. If you haven't seen block 1, I will link to it below. In the video for block 1, there's also layouts for the 12-inch blocks. Now all the blocks in this series are not going to be 12 inches. However, most of them are, and I think I'm up to 6 blocks right now. So they'll have one coming out once a week, once every other week. I'm not going to put out a definite plan. It's just that there's going to be some quilt blocks over the next few weeks, guys. But each one of them will also have its own PDF, and none of them will have piecing instructions on the PDF. So they do have the cutting instructions and show you how to lay out the pieces, where those go. They're all numbered, or they have a letter for each piece. And then I have the reverse block, so if you want to make a quilt with just one style block and just reverse it, makes it look a little bit different. And from here on out, I didn't do it with the last one. I'm also going to have a second page that will have a full printable. And that's it. So tell me down in the comments, are you a cat lover or are you a dog lover? Now I'm going to say that I am an animal lover, but when it comes to actual pets to have in my home, I tend to want a dog, and that's because we live out in the boonies, out in Podunk, and dogs make noise if somebody comes around. So I like having that dog that will bark, and I only like having one animal at a time. So I can't have a cat and a dog. Right now we have a German Shepherd. I'll put a picture in here of my little cutie patootie. Her name's Khaleesi. She is a rescue dog. So, and she's just as lovable as can be. She's a little bit rambunctious, but I'm curious as to how many of you love cats and how many of you love dogs. Let me know down below. And if you like this video, you like this quilt block, give it a little thumbs up. Just a little thing that you can do that helps me out a lot. Until then, guys, stitch up something sweet, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. I love you.